All right, well, I suppose we can get started then. Hello and welcome everyone to the last virtual education program of Boreal Stargazing Week. My name is Jesse. I am the education specialist at Voyageurs Conservancy. We are the official nonprofit partner for Voyageurs National Park. The Boreal Stargazing Week is a collaboration of several different partners, of course, ourselves, Voyageurs Conservancy, Friends of the Boundary Waters, the National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, and the Starry Skies North. And oops, as well as that, we have funding provided by the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund and the National Park Foundation. So, if this is your first time tuning in to Boreal Stargazing Week, it is a week filled with awesome events all related to the winter night skies and its preservation. These events had in-person programming such as snowshoeing at Boundary Waters as well as Voyageurs National Park. We had virtual education programs such as the STEM Challenge with Dacia and Expeditions and Education. We had a program on Ojibwe perspectives and experiences with the wonders of the night sky the other day. And of course, we have the program which we will have today in just a moment. And another component of our Boreal Stargazing Week is the screening of Northern Nights, Starry Skies, a documentary about the world's largest designated dark sky area right in Minnesota, in your backyard for many of you. This was initially supposed to be presented yesterday, but it has been rescheduled to Tuesday, February 28th, 7 p.m. at Hamline University. So if you scheduled before, you do have to reschedule since the date has been changed. So if you're in the Twin Cities, I highly recommend you go check out this documentary. A lot of people who have presented during Boreal Stargazing Week are featured in this film, so go check it out. And before we begin, I do want to mention a land acknowledgement of the areas that we have talked about and some of the places we have been to during Boreal Stargazing Week. Throughout this week, we have discussed areas and the events have taken place within Voyageurs National Park, circled over here, and Boundary Waters, circled over here. Both of these parks are within the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe people who have lived and continue to live in this area. So when we visit these places, we should remember and respect that. And lastly, of course, a quick introduction to our main speakers, myself and Astro Bob, who you can see over here as well. As I mentioned before, I am the education specialist at Voyageurs Conservancy. A very quick background on myself. I am originally from New York City. That's where I spent most of my life, but I eventually started working for the National Park Service. I ended up living in very remote places where you could see lots and lots of stars. I instantly fell in love with it, and I just love learning about it and learning how to teach about it as well. And through my National Park Service experience, I eventually ended up working for the Voyageurs Conservancy, where a large portion of my job is to teach about the wonders of the night sky. And after my presentation will be none other than Astro Bob. He is an amateur astronomer who has been doing this for years. He writes segments for the Duluth News Tribune and is just a wonderful human to be around and to learn from. He is an excellent science communicator, and I'm very excited for his presentation, which will be following mine. Bob, is there anything you wanted to throw in about yourself, or would you prefer to introduce yourself before your program?
Just that I'm an amateur astronomer. I love the stars, and I got interested in the sky and watching the stars probably around the age of many of the students who are watching right now. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. And the very, very, very last thing is just please keep yourself on mute. Questions can be chatted to the host, and we'll have a designated time for questions and answers after both presentations. So jot down your questions. You can throw them in at any time, but we'll have a designated time during the end of the program. Please Please ask questions. We encourage it, and we love to read them and answer them. So that was a lot of information. Are we all ready to learn about light pollution? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready. A lot of you, I can't see you, but I'm assuming your thumbs are up. Awesome, cool, very great. All right, so my presentation is all about this idea of light pollution. Now, when you first hear this term, it can be kind of confusing. I know when I first heard it, I didn't really quite understand it because, at least for me, when I think of the word pollution, my brain thinks of something that is harmful towards an environment. For instance, there can be pollution of the air, of the soil, of the water, oceans and rivers. So I said, how can light be a type of pollution? That just didn't make sense to me at first. But by the end of this presentation, as we discuss this idea of what light pollution is and how it's harmful, I hope you can answer that question by the end. How can light be a form of pollution? So in very simple terms, light pollution is the invasion of night skies by artificial light. Okay, I'm going to go through a few different pictures here, and we're going to see different types of light pollution. We can see that it's most pronounced, most highlighted in big city areas. Again, it's the invasion of night skies by artificial light. I'm going all across the globe right now. We're looking at lots of light pollution. That's in Manhattan. That's where I was born, nearby there. Lots and lots of light pollution. But you know, the idea of light pollution invading the night skies is a fairly recent phenomenon. If you were alive a little over 100 years ago, you could go outside almost anywhere and see that beautiful band of the Milky Way shooting across the sky. But now, not many people do. In fact, the last time I read this statistic, is about 80% of people in the US can no longer see the Milky Way from their own backyard. And we can see back on this title slide, light pollution is all across the country. We can see the location of big cities by these bright emanating points of light. Lots of light pollution in these clusters. And from this picture, we see light pollution as a big issue in the US. But if we zoom out, we can see it's a global phenomenon as well. There's lots of light pollution throughout the globe. And so the use of light has become a normal part of our everyday lives. We have it in our big shopping centers. We use it to find our way around. We find it in big cities. And the point of this presentation is not to say light is a bad thing, never use light. It's about learning about what the negative repercussions of too much light is, or too much light pollution. It's about seeing what the data shows us and how we can be a little more responsible with the light that we do use. And so today we are going to learn 4 different areas in which light pollution can be harmful towards. Do you guys think you can remember these 4 things? You can give me a thumbs up. All right, I see like 2 thumbs. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Yeah, so these 4 areas that are affected by too much light pollution. I'll give a brief overview now. 1, wildlife. 2, humans. 3, our history and our culture. And 4, our sense of curiosity and wonder. Again, these are the 4 areas we're going to discuss that are impacted negatively by too much light pollution. So the first one on the list is wildlife. So wildlife is affected, or lots of different types of wildlife is affected by too much light pollution. And the interesting thing that you can see from the slide is it's lots of different types of animals. We have mammals, amphibians, insects, birds. Lots of studies have been done on animals, and we see that they are affected negatively by too much light pollution. For instance, mammals like the mountain lion need the cover of darkness in order to hunt their prey. When they're exposed to too much light, their unsuspecting prey can see them. They're less likely to be able to successfully hunt these prey. Amphibians like These frogs, when they're exposed to too much light, the croaking that they usually do is to attract mates. What we're finding is lots of frogs are becoming very shy and reserved when they're exposed to too much light. They are not croaking as much and therefore less likely to find mates and reproduce. And of course, we've all seen those very sad videos of the baby turtles being drawn out of the water into big cities because of the lights. The baby turtles are now exploring cities. We don't want them on our streets. That's very dangerous for them. But the animal that I want to talk about in more detail are birds, because they have been heavily researched. The negative effects of light pollution on birds has been heavily researched. And the reason for this is that many birds are migrating at nighttime. Migration is when an animal goes from one point to another point, usually in response to the changing of seasons. And what's happening is that as they're making this big journey, thousands of miles sometimes, there are big cities in between these 2 points, and they're being drawn off their course. So they're going hundreds of miles in the wrong direction, only to have to remake that up later. And it's causing a lot of stress for a number of different types of birds. Another crazy thing that I learned, I was very surprised when I learned this, is that a lot of birds use the stars to navigate. And so think about it, if the stars are acting as their map, they're following the stars to get to where they need to go, and suddenly there's too much light pollution and you can no longer see the stars, they're pretty much losing their map. That would be like if you were trying to find your way somewhere and you're following a map, someone just took it and ripped it out of your hand. You wouldn't know where you're going. Or maybe you're using your cell phone, Google Maps. Point is, your map is being ripped away. Lots of birds are not being able to find their way to where they need to go in order to survive and reproduce. Second point in which light pollution can negatively impact are, of course, humans. This is a more recent kind of study. We see that light is surrounding our everyday lives. And the reason that too much light can be a bad thing for humans is that our brains have evolved in a very specific way over thousands and thousands of years. For the vast majority of human existence, we have been exposed to regular periods of light in the daytime from the sun, and then darkness at nighttime. And that's just how it was for the vast majority of human existence. And as such, our brains have evolved to sync up with the regular periods of light in the day, darkness at night, light in the day, dark at night. And what happens is when we're exposed to darkness or the absence of light, our brain has evolved to release a very specific chemical to the rest of our body. It's called melatonin. You can think of melatonin as a sleepy chemical or a drowsy chemical. It's what helps us to go to sleep. But with our everyday kind of modern way of living, we have light in the daytime from the sun, but then also light at nighttime from everything, from our big cities to our Walmarts. I know I'm guilty of this. I'll have my laptop or my cell phone out at night. As light is shining into our eyes, it's kind of confusing our brains. We're not releasing as much melatonin, the sleepy chemical, that helps us to go to sleep. And what we're finding is that a lot of people are having a lot of issues falling asleep now. And the third point, light pollution is harmful towards our history and our culture. This slide was meant to convey that cultural stories are connected to the stars and the night sky all across the globe. The view of the stars belongs to everyone. In fact, if you had a time machine and you went back to any time period, if you could teleport to any place on the globe, you would see that people have always had a deep connection to the stars. In this slide, we can see star charts from Ojibwe. We have some Norse mythology, Japanese traditions that are tied to the night sky, Arabic constellations, ancient Chinese star charts, Greek mythology, and many cultures from countries in Africa. And so in this slide, we can see that the stars were important. I have 8 different pictures here, But the truth is, I could have chosen from literally hundreds of different cultures, hundreds of different images to convey the same point. And although the stories told by these different cultures will vary, a common theme is that the stars were always viewed as something magnificent and grand, something larger than ourselves. And so the issue of excessive amounts of light pollution can be seen as an erasure of many people's culture and history, removing a crucial part of what it meant to be human for millennia. And the last point is that too much light pollution can be harmful towards our sense of wonder. It's a bit related to the previous point, but for as long as humans have been around, we've always looked up to the stars to find meaning and to explore our curiosity. And we have come such a long way in finding out our place in the universe. We started off with viewing points of light and predicting their patterns, being very intimately involved with observing the patterns of the stars and the planets, to eventually creating this object known as a telescope, which would magnify the appearance of these objects, giving a little bit more detail. And our technology has improved to the point where we have sent out actual machinery out into space, big pieces of metal the size of school buses or bigger, out into space to travel and explore space, and giving us actual photos of these things that used to just be points of light in the sky. Photos with color and just these beautiful patterns that we never knew existed before. As time went on, we have created extremely powerful telescopes that are sent out into space, such as the Hubble Space Telescope, which was launched the year that I was born. And it's brought us some of the most breathtaking photos, stuff straight out of a science fiction movie. We've learned about areas of dust and gas that are areas that are filled with dust and gas where baby stars are being born into existence. We have learned about areas called globular star clusters, where there's literally hundreds of thousands of stars gravitationally bound to one another. We've learned about dead stars, some stars that kind of just poof peacefully away out of existence, and other times violently exploding and spreading their star guts everywhere. And I could go on and on about this, but most recently, we have the James Webb Telescope that was released on Christmas of 2021. It's been a huge accomplishment in the human journey to understanding our place in space. James Webb is the most powerful telescope to date. In this slide, we can see some of the most magnificent and beautiful photos. These were some of the first images taken, but if you go on the NASA website, you can see they have a lot more now. There's so much about the universe we don't know about yet, and James Webb is constantly teaching us new information. And so that was a long-winded way of saying that looking up and wondering is part of what it means to be human. It's what we've been doing for thousands of years. And with increasing amounts of light pollution filling our sky, we do not have the same environment available to gaze up, appreciate, and wonder, and to become inspired to learn about and explore the night sky. So we have learned a lot. We've learned 4 areas in which light pollution can negatively impact, but now we want to learn how can we combat light pollution? What can we do to solve this issue? So one thing to recognize is that there are organizations out there who are working towards remedying the issue. One of them is known as the International Dark Sky Association, or the IDA. They work with areas to make them become more dark sky friendly. That is, working with these areas to reduce the amount of light that's shining up in the sky, creating smarter designs to use light efficiently. And when an area has proven themselves worthy, they are awarded a dark sky certificate. And one of these areas that has recently obtained their certification is none other than Voyageurs. Voyageurs National Park, where I work, has gained their certification recently. It's a huge deal obtaining this certification from the IDA. They don't just hand these out to anyone walking down the street. You have to prove yourself of being worthy of such a designation. So, what does that mean? There are certain criteria to obtain this type of certification. One of them is that you have to prove that you are dark enough. And the way that you do that is with this fancy, cute little device over here known as a sky quality meter. What you do is you point it up to the sky and you press a button, and it gives you a number, a quantitative measurement of darkness. And so you don't have to worry so much about the number on the screen. Just know that if you took this device and you did it in a big city like Twin Cities, and then if you took the same device and you did it in a dark place like Boundary Waters or Voyageurs National Park, you get two very different numbers. One showing that it's very light and filled with light pollution. The other, like at Voyageurs, it'd show that it's a very dark place. And so we have to report these numbers every month to not only prove that we were dark, but that we continue to remain dark. So every month we're taking these measurements. We're saying, hey, look, we're still in it. We're still in this fight. We are still promising to remain dark. And another way we have proven ourselves worthy of this designation is to conduct educational lessons about light pollution, like the one you're listening to right now. During the spring and summer, I joined Voyageurs National Park in person to present these educational lessons. For these presentations, I encourage the public to connect with the wonders of the night sky through constellation stories, telescope observation sessions, and teaching about the adverse effects of light pollution. So if you are all near Voyageurs or you're thinking about a cool place to come during the summer, come on up to Voyageurs. I'll be there. I'll have a really cool telescope to show you awesome stuff. We look at planets, we look at galaxies, and all sorts of crazy stuff. So come on up. It'll be a lot of fun. Oh, and in this picture, we can see the northern lights. I know it's a blurry picture. It's my first time trying to take one with my camera. This was the first time I've seen them, and as well as all the visitors here. This was at the end of one of my programs. And you can only really see the northern lights in super dark areas. So that's another reason to come on up to the park. And so I know I'm running a little short on time, so I'm going to breeze through kind of this last part, but it is very important. What you can do on a personal level to help combat light pollution is to think about the types of lights that you see in your own neighborhood. In this picture from left to right, we can see one that says very bad and one that says best. In the very bad example, you have light shining everywhere. It's on the floor, it's going sideways, it's up in the sky, it's blocking the stars. While the one on the very right says best, it is only shining towards the ground. And the difference between these two designs is you literally just put a piece of metal on top of it and it directs the light to the ground. As creatures that walk on the ground, this design makes a lot more sense. You only need the light directed to where it is needed and not shining up into the sky for all the reasons we listed earlier in this presentation. So if anyone is especially passionate about this cause, you can walk around your neighborhood, make note of the different types of lights you see, and if you see them more leaning towards the very bad example, you can write out to City Council. They are the ones who write the ordinances in your neighborhood, and you can teach them about this. It can be an educational lesson. And light pollution is a pretty recent phenomenon that we're learning about. It is possible the people on your city council aren't even aware that this is an issue. So you can teach them everything you learned about today. And lastly, very quickly, very small things you can do is switch over to red lights. You'll notice if you come out to any of our events, we use red lights instead of white lights. The reason for that is white light is very piercing. It kind of erases your night vision, your ability to see in the dark and see the stars, where red light is a lot more gentle. So switching to red light when you're out camping, you'll see a lot more stars. Motion sensor lights, very self-explanatory. It turns on when you're near it, it turns off when you're away. And probably the most simple of all, is put your curtain down at night, because your light in your house, when your curtains are wide open, they can trespass onto other people's property and kind of blind them and rob them of the ability to see the stars. I don't know about all of you, but I've lived in some places where the lights were just shining through the window. I had to get special blackout curtains. Just close the curtains. Very simple. Okay, that was a lot of information. I will quickly recap it here. We learned that light pollution is the invasion of night skies by artificial light. We learned that it's an issue throughout the country, but also globally. We learned 4 different areas that are negatively impacted by too much light pollution: wildlife and their ability to survive. We learned about humans and health conditions such as being able to sleep, our sense of culture and our history, as well as our sense of wonder and exploration. We learned about the International Dark Sky Association and how they're helping to combat light pollution. Voyageurs National Park and Boundary Waters being some of these areas that have been certified as an international dark sky area. We learned that what it means to be one is that you take measurements of the darkness of your area, as well as continue to teach about the adverse effects of too much light pollution. And then lastly, we learned about what you personally can do to help fight light pollution, switching to red lights, using motion sensor lights in front of your house, closing your curtains, and for those of you especially passionate about the cause, making note of the lights used in your neighborhood and writing out to City Council to see what they can do to fix that. I hope you all have learned so much. I hope you have all become inspired to come up and visit places like Boundary Waters, Voyageurs National Park, or whatever the closest dark sky area is to you. And again, we will have questions and answers at the end of this presentation. I hope to see you all very soon. Thank you all very much. All right, Bob, I will hand it off to you. Again, if you have any questions, please jot them down. We will have a designated time at the end of this program. We would love to answer your questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jesse. That was great. I love that you love dark skies, and it's always something for us to keep watch for. And there's so many little things that we could do that you pointed out right in our own homes. As long as you have a clear sky, and this is my part of the presentation now. My name is Bob King. People call me Astro Bob because I've been interested in astronomy for a long time. I look up, the stars make me really happy. They still do since I was a kid. And I think part of it is just the beauty of the night sky. And also stars make me wonder about the world. I look at a star, I kind of think, where did you come from? How did you get here? How did the Earth get here? Are there planets around any of the stars that I look at? And there are so many ways to enjoy them just for their sheer beauty and the peace that they can give us. But we can also take our binoculars or a telescope and zoom in on things and see galaxies and planets and all kinds of wonders. But you don't need a telescope to see some of these things. You just need your eyes, really. And that's what I'm going to talk about here today. It's just using your eyes to see some of the bright things in the nighttime sky, no matter where you live, whether you're in the country or even in the city. And we'll start out with the very brightest things. And let me get to my presentation here. And we'll start up. And I call it, what will the sky show us tonight? Because it's almost like if you go to a play, there's something you anticipate, darkness, what's going to show? Will I see the moon? What bright stars? Maybe I'll even see a meteor in the sky. Tonight, if you go out and if we have clear skies, now, if it's not clear tonight, don't worry, because the things I'm going to show you will be out night after night after night, especially the two bright stars. I call them stars, little quotes around them. Two bright stars low in the western sky, just about an hour after sunset. You can see them right here. There's the planet Jupiter, and there's Venus. And this is a little picture of the sky, the way it's going to look tonight. So you'll see Jupiter and Venus.
We can't see, sorry, Bob, we can't see your screen right now.
Oh, okay. Pardon me. Let me go back. I'm sorry about that. At least you heard me. That's something. So we'll start here from the beginning. How was that? Can everybody see everything now? All right, I see some thumbs up. Thank you. So this is the little picture I was talking about. And if you go out tonight or in the next, even over the next week, and you look low in the western sky about an hour after sunset, you'll see two bright objects there. The top one, at least for tonight, will be Jupiter, and right below it will be the planet Venus. So you've got the two brightest planets in the evening sky. And you can even see those if you happen to live in, say, St. Paul or Minneapolis. Above them is the crescent moon. So a lovely lineup of all three objects tonight in the evening sky. Here's a picture I took of those two planets. This is just from my house, maybe a little less than a week ago, where you can see Venus between the power lines and Jupiter above it. They look like stars, but of course they're actual worlds, real planets. If we could zoom in, say with a telescope, we would see this enormous globe that Jupiter is. It's 11 times as big as the planet you walk on and wake up on every single day of your life. 11 times the size of the Earth. Venus is much smaller. It's about the same size as the Earth. So it's also 11 times smaller than Jupiter. And they're going to appear together in the sky, as I said, over the next week. But there's something really extraordinary that's going to happen very soon. And let me kind of set this up for you. If you keep an eye on Jupiter and Venus over the next few nights, you're going to see Jupiter working its way down into the glow where the sun sets. At the same time, Venus is working its way up towards Jupiter. So what do you think is going to happen? Are those two planets going to crash? Probably not, right? Because Venus is much closer to the Earth than Jupiter, which is very, very far away. They only appear to come together in the sky because their movements around the sun bring them together close. They look really close. And when two bright objects like that get very close in the sky, it's a beautiful, beautiful sight. Astronomers call them conjunctions. And check this out, all right? On March 1st, just like two eyes in the sky, if it's clear at your house, you can go out, say, after dinner time and look to the west. Again, that's the direction the sun sets, about an hour after sunset, and you'll see them right next to each other, as close as they can get. And again, we call that a conjunction. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight. Bring your parents out too and have them come see with you. Then the two planets will separate. If you keep an eye on them, you'll be able to actually watch them move apart again. So that's a lot of fun. You can see our solar system in action, just right out your front door. You can even put your arms up and they'll be close enough to put your hands up and put them together, right there. Make a little hole with your fist and you can look through it and see Venus and Jupiter. So those are the two brightest things besides the moon that are out, easily visible anytime in the next week. Speaking of the moon, here it is. We have a crescent moon right now. And you can see the right side is that beautiful, beautiful crescent shape, and that's lit up by sunlight. Do you see that dark, kind of smoky, strange part of the moon? That's actually lit up by our planet, by the Earth. We call it Earthlight. Let me explain. Here's the sun off to the right. The sunlight is shining on the moon and the Earth. The parts on the Earth and the moon where the sun touches, that's where it's daylight. So if you could stand here on the moon in the shiny crescent, you would see the sun up in the sky just as you do when you stand on the bright Earth. Light, though, from the Earth reflects off into space and it reflects all the way out to the moon. And then the moon reflects a little bit of that light back to the earth. Since it's not sunny sunlight, but just light reflected by the earth to the moon and back, it looks very faint. But if you were an astronaut standing here on the night side of the moon, right there where it's dark, you would have enough light from the earth in the sky to be able to read a book. That is unbelievable. That's how shiny our planet is. It's almost like a little light that you have in your room. Like I used to have when I was a kid, I had a night light always in my room. And maybe some of you have a night light too. So sometimes I like to see the earth as the moon's night light. Not too bright, but just enough light to kind of see your way around on that spooky, dark part of the moon. And you can see that with your eye. You don't need a telescope. The bright, shiny part and the earth-lit part. Now, I hope some of you have a pair of binoculars, and I hope they're not this big because these would be way too heavy to carry. But if you have a pair of binoculars, or if your parents have binoculars, take those binoculars, focus them on the moon the next few nights, or the next time it's clear, and you will be able to see holes along the edge of the moon, right along this, where the dark part meets the bright part. You'll see these holes. They look like saucers or dishes. Those are actually craters, big holes in the lunar crust that were created when asteroids and huge meteorites bombarded the moon many millions and even billions of years ago. And you could see that with just a pair of binoculars. Just be sure you hold them as steady as you can when you go out, all right? And then focus very carefully so the moon looks sharp, and then see what you can see. It's a really great way to explore the moon. The moon is so close to us. It's the closest alien world out there. And we can see so much on it when we, just with our eyes and with just a little bit of magnification. I love walking in the moonlight, and maybe you also like that. So I am going to encourage you to get together with your friends or your family. And on March 7th, when we have our next full moon, to go out at night and walk in the bright moonlight. You know how bright it is at night. You can still see the stars, and yet there's this brilliant moon, and it makes such cool, gnarly shadows. You know, you walk under the trees. The moon shines because it's reflecting sunlight, but the moon's kind of a dark, rocky body, and so it doesn't reflect much light. So moonlight is sort of bright and dark. It's very dramatic, and it's just, I love walking in moonlight. You can see so much with just your eyes around you by moonlight alone. We have very powerful eyes. When we give them a chance, we can see a lot, even with a little light. Now, besides the moon and the bright planets, there are a whole lot of spectacular constellations up there. There's a total of, let me remember, 88 constellations. One of the brightest, and they all represent all kinds of stories. Every time you see a constellation, there is a story behind it. We've got people up there, you got animals, you got gods and goddesses. It's wild, all of the things that are happening above our head. One of the stories concerns a bright group of stars. Maybe you're already familiar with him. His name is Orion the Hunter, and you'll recognize him by, I bet you've seen these 3 stars in a row. I'd love to see a show of hands. Who's ever seen those 3 stars in a row? And that's the belt of Orion the Hunter. Here he is in a painting. Here's his belt, 1, 2, 3 stars. He's holding a club. He's got a lion. He's kneeling. He is out for the hunt. Here's a photograph of Orion, just to refresh you, just in case you haven't looked up. And the way to see Orion is just to face towards the south. As soon as it gets dark, just go out, look to the south, and you'll see 3 stars in a row. And that's his belt. And around the belt is this box, kind of a rectangle you can see here, that forms the rest of the outline of the constellation of Orion. Now, our constellations come from ancient Greek and Middle Eastern mythology. So they go way, way back, you know, to Western Europe and also to the Middle East. Orion, for instance, that constellation was recognized by the Sumerian people as long ago as 4000 BC. So he's been around a while. But other cultures also have their own views, their own ways of looking at the night sky. For instance, the Ojibwe people here in Minnesota and the region, they see a similar Orion figure, but they don't see him as Orion. He is called the Winter Maker, Biboan Kionimi. And the Winter Maker is perfect. Instead of a belt, by the way, he wears a sash. And he also is much bigger than our normal Orion because there are 2 extra stars on either side of the figure that are included in the Winter Maker's figure. And what does the Winter Maker do? Well, you know, when Orion comes up, it's wintertime. So Orion and his gigantic arms just throw tons of snow down from the sky and bring powerful winds. And so he's a perfect symbol of winter in the nighttime sky, just a different way of looking at a similar group of stars. Behind Orion is the Great Panther and his curly tail. For us, in the ancient Greek myths, this part of the sky is Leo the lion. I'm going to give you a special key here, all right? Once you know where Orion's belt is, use it to help you find other stars and constellations. If you shoot an arrow down through Orion's belt, the first star you'll see is the dog star named Sirius. And it's called the dog star because it's the brightest star in this constellation called Canis Major, which means big dog. I'm not kidding, it really does. It's Latin for big dog. So that's one way you can use the belt. You can also take Orion's belt, shoot up, go the other direction, and it will take you to this bright orange star called Aldebaran. And Aldebaran is the brightest star in a constellation of Taurus, the bull. Orion is kind of facing off towards the snorting bull up above his shoulder. And once you find Aldebaran, you can hang a left and go up and find another orange star. And that bright orange star, the 2 of them are paired together. That bright one is the planet Mars. And the moon will be very close to Mars on February the 27th. So the moon can help us find some of these bright planets. And I have one more story for you about constellations I thought you might enjoy. I love animals, and animals are all over the sky. There are birds, there are chameleons, there's water snakes, all kinds of things. But this story is about a gazelle, and it comes to us from the ancient Arabia. And in this story, a gazelle was just out drinking at a pond, or maybe it was foraging in a field looking for food to eat, when it was discovered by a lion. The lion saw the gazelle in the distance and began to charge the gazelle to run after it. What did the gazelle do? Well, it ran away, right? It leapt away. It's trying to save its life. As it did, the gazelle left hoof prints in the soft mud near the pond. And this ancient story, this ancient myth, is celebrated in the nighttime sky. And we call it, these pattern of stars are the 3 leaps of the gazelle. And each one of those pairs of stars, which is located just above the Big Dipper, each one of those pairs represents a softly glowing hoof print left by the gazelle as it tried to get away from the lion. And it did successfully get away from the lion. And its hoof prints were put in the sky by the ancient Arabic peoples. And you see them today. It's also the feet of the constellation of the Great Bear. So you can see them as the paws or the feet of the Great Bear, or as the 3 leaps of the gazelle. The part of the bear that's easiest for us to see and to know are the 7 stars that make up the Big Dipper. And you can take the 2 stars at the top of the Dipper, and once again, just like we did with Orion, you can shoot a line through them. Guess where it'll take you? Right straight to the North Star, Polaris. And that star will always sit there due north in the sky, even as all the other stars revolve around it. One last thing I wanted to mention is the Northern Lights. We live in Minnesota, and on dark nights and from dark places, we can often see the Northern Lights, especially March and April are great months for getting out there and viewing the lights. This is an aurora we had here. I photographed and observed in Duluth just a couple of weeks ago. And I had to walk through some pretty deep snow to see this sight, but oh man, it was so worth it. Auroras are caused by flares, these big explosions on the surface of the sun that send out stuff into space, and then it hooks in. It gets its little hooks into the Earth's upper atmosphere. All of that stuff comes raining down and makes the atoms in the air above our heads glow green and beautiful red colors. And that's the Northern Lights. What do you need to see it? If you find out, say from television, maybe online, that there's going to be a Northern Lights, the main thing is to find a place where you can look to have a clear, as dark a sky as possible, clear, dark sky to the north, and then go out there and wait and hope that it'll just blossom. And I hope it does for you. If you haven't seen the Northern Lights yet, it's one of the most magnificent things to view in Minnesota skies. So we come back to the stars, a place for us to wonder, a place for us to explore our curiosity, to find a sort of comfort. They're non-judgmental. They allow our minds to just bloom, kind of like if you've ever seen a flower open, the petals open, the stars do the exact same things for us when we look up. Sometimes I just look up at the stars and I have no words, and that is enough. To help you find some of these things that I've talked about today, I would encourage teachers who are listening to this to go to the website I marked here called skymaps.com and to download a monthly sky map. It's a free download. This is just called the Evening Sky Map at skymaps.com. This is for the month of February. And what you get is a star chart. See this right here on the right? That is the whole sky, the dome of the sky, flattened down into a circle. Okay, and the center of the circle is the overhead point, and the outer edge of the circle is the horizon all the way around you, 360 degrees. But even better than the star map, over here, there's a sky calendar. So you'll know what cool things are happening in the night sky, say when Jupiter and Venus are coming together, or if there's an eclipse of the moon or a meteor shower, or anything like that. So the students, you can put this down and do your own, get your own maps if you like, and print them out, or also for the teachers. And with that, I just want to say that I hope that you find the stars as lovely and as happy making as I do. And I hope you have clear skies very soon, even tonight. Thank you. And Jesse, how are we doing here?
Yeah, first of all, fantastic presentation. So good, and I love that you have you have objects out there that anyone can go see. You don't need a special telescope. You don't need fancy equipment. You just need to bring your eyeballs.
Just for your eyeballs, right?
that.
Are we still connected with the classes?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
Great.
So if anyone we do have time for questions and answers. Yeah, feel free to type them into the chat. We have moderators here, and they will select the questions and relay them to us, and we will do our best to answer them.
Give us some hard ones.
Yeah, come on. Give us some hard ones.
Go ahead.
Give us some curveballs. Yeah.
The easy ones are fine too, but anything you're curious about the sky or other ways, as Jesse explained so nicely about light pollution, we're always happy to help.
Oh, looks like we have one. This one will be for you, Bob. Where in Duluth did you get that Northern Lights picture?
Where in Duluth? I just went north of Duluth several miles, probably just 3 miles outside of the city above Lester Park. There's a field there, and I thought it was iced over and really hard so I could walk on top. And then I soon discovered that I busted through the snow right up to my thighs, right up to my waist almost. But it made me laugh. I was laughing the whole time. And then I put my tripod and pointed it north and I waited. You know, at first, Northern Lights, it takes patience sometimes. They're very slow. There's a little glow. And then if you wait 15 minutes, it might get a little brighter. And if it starts getting little rays popping up and moving, then you need to stick around because that could mean you're in for a great show. So I stayed about an hour and a half for that Northern Lights, and that was the peak photo that you saw. And I could actually see color. I invited my daughter out with me, and we saw greens and reds.
Fantastic. I love the adventure to get out there. Some of my favorite nature moments, star moments, they're always tied to a struggle to get out to the point and having lots of patience. So
that is so true. And that's when that's one of the joys of any hobby, I guess, but particularly nature hobbies like astronomy, is there are often unplanned adventures involved. And who doesn't like an adventure? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we'll leave time for some more questions here too.
Yeah, fantastic. Next one looks like it says, is there anything online that can help me learn more about the night sky? If I can throw in my thoughts and then pass it off to you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are endless resources out there. One that I'll quickly plug in is I actually present, we have 2 lessons so far, but we're creating more. We have presentations on light pollution, which is like the one you just saw today, as well as one specifically on northern lights and how they form and how to increase your chances of seeing them. They are based on next generation science standards, and they are a 3-touch model, which means we do a pre-activity, the activity itself, where I present the lesson to you all virtually, like I'm doing right now. Then we have a post-activity as well. And we can send the links out to those. We call it our dark sky classroom. And yeah, it'd be my pleasure to present some of those for all of you. We have some cool ones, such as one on moon phases coming up, as well as some other ones in the works of being created. So that's my answer. That's an online resource that you can all check out. Bob, what do you think?
Oh gosh, you know, there are so many of them, as you know. One place that's really fun, if you want to learn a lot more about the planets, for instance, and about asteroids for that matter, it's called 9planets.org, I believe is the website. Just type the word 9 planets, and I think that alone will get you there. The one I already mentioned, which was skymaps.com, which gives you that monthly calendar. They change up every single month. And also, if you travel, there are maps there for if you happen to travel down to the equator or even the southern hemisphere. Another good website, if you're interested in the aurora and you really want to keep tabs on when the northern lights are out, is to go on Facebook. And there is a group of aurora hunters who live in the Great Lakes region. And these people are up all night long. So I guarantee if any aurora happens, they will report on it. And the group to look up on Facebook is called the Great Lakes Aurora Hunters. So that's a good one right there. I also do a blog online. You can look me up and I talk about all kinds of things you can see in the night sky. And it's just called Astro Bob. So just Google Astro Bob. And if I could think of any more while we're still answering questions, I'll toss those in too.
Yeah, and actually, that's fantastic. And I thought of one more that helped me a lot personally, is a website called Stellarium. And if you just type that into Google, it should come up. There's a web version. I use that website all the time. Essentially, it's an interactive map. You set your location. You can toggle the time and the date and just watch as the stars and the planets kind of dance across the sky. So a lot of times before I give a presentation and I want to know what's out, I'll go to the website Stellarium. I'll set my location. I'll set the time that I'm going out, and you can see what will be out during that time. And then I'll try to test myself, especially for new constellations and things like that. I'll kind of just look out and be like, okay, I saw this on Stellarium, and yeah, that's how I've learned a ton of constellations. And additionally, I will say for me personally, going out with somebody who can guide you. This is not an online resource, but in-person resource. For me, I've had friends who were very experienced uh, with navigating around the night sky, and I remember I went in as a complete beginner. I could barely find the Big Dipper, and I had people kind of guide me through slowly. And that was just so helpful and so wonderful to just be with friends and looking up at the stars. So if you know anybody that can take you out and guide you, that's uh, I would say that's a wonderful resource to use.
If I could add to that, that is great. I'm so glad you mentioned Stellarium. As in terms of a personal connection, you can, for instance, in the Twin Cities, you can get a hold of the people with the Minnesota Astronomical Society, or you can just check to see if your city might also have a group of amateur astronomers that meet online or in person, and also have star parties where they bring out telescopes. The link, I don't have the direct link, but the Stellarium version that Jesse is talking about, if you search for Stellarium on the web, just type in Stellarium web, and it is a fantastic teacher resource because you can run this program online with the students, and it's an interactive star atlas. You can set it to any time or date. You can find the planets. It is just absolute dynamite.
Fantastic. Looks like we have another question. How are blood moons formed in the night sky? And this is one of those curveballs we were asking to throw at us. My brief understanding, you can probably explain it better, but it has to do with the alignments of the sun, the earth, and the moon. And it is the earth's shadow, something with the earth's shadow being cast onto the moon, something with the angle. But I'm going to pass this on to Bob because I think he may have a more concise way of explaining it.
Oh, well, thanks.
If you do, yeah. I'm hoping you do. I don't have the answer.
A blood moon is basically the moon in eclipse. And when the moon is totally eclipsed, you know, all the sunlight is gone. So the moon looks kind of dark, and it also looks red. So it reminds people of the color of blood. But it's basically the moon in near full eclipse or totally eclipsed moon. And what happens, what makes it that blood color, is that during the eclipse, when the moon is tucked behind the earth, here's the earth, here's the moon, the earth casts a shadow, the moon moves into the shadow, sunlight leaks around the edges of the earth through the atmosphere into the shadow, but just the reddened sunlight, the sunset sunrise type colors. And that's what gives the moon that red color when it's totally eclipsed. Beautiful sight. I'm glad whoever, that's a great question.
That is, yeah, and great explanation. I learned something as well. So
well, that's great. That's great.
Yep.
And are there any other questions?
Yeah, anything else? Well, if there are no more new questions, please feel free to email us if you think of anything later today or whenever. Really, shoot us an email. This Zoom meeting is being recorded as well as all of our other virtual ones. So please check out our website, share them with anyone, and share what you have learned today. Is there anything else you want to add, Bob, or any of the moderators?
Well, I just hope that everybody enjoys getting a chance to look up and enjoy the stars, and try to come up to Voyageurs National Park if you can. It seems like whenever I come up here from Duluth, I always see the Northern Lights. I've got my fingers crossed tonight that might happen again. So you have a dark sky here, and oh man, you'll see so many stars you can't even count them.
Fantastic. Well said. Well, again, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Bob, for
Thank you.
presenting. Thank you, moderators, for moderating. again, shoot us any questions through email. We would love to answer them. All
Thanks a
right.
lot, everybody. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it, having us in your classrooms today.
Fantastic. All right, everyone.